Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And I have a really fascinating guest with me today. Her name is Toni La Matta. She is a highly regarded spiritual coach, dynamic master teacher, internationally acclaimed speaker, accredited international Enneagram professional, and master quantum living coach. She served as a Catholic nun and pastoral associate for 16 years before discovering New Thought and becoming a minister over 30 years ago. Toni holds a doctorate in religious studies, as well as a doctorate of divinity and three master's degrees, one in pastoral ministry, one in adult education, and one in mathematics. Toni, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. Glad to be with you. Mhm.
You truly are a lifelong learner, is what I guessed from looking at your bio.
I love to learn. I actually always joke if people would just pay me to study, I would do that all the time. So it's something that I love, and I hope that I teach my clients the same thing. The more we keep learning, the more we keep growing.
Absolutely. So, even as a young child, were you really interested in learning, or did that come at a later age?
I had my face in a book from the time I was able to read.
Hmm.
When I studied the Enneagram, it's interesting. One of the types is someone who just constantly studies and reads, and I thought that was me at first. And then I discovered that that type like stays with one thing and they focus real intensely. And that is not who I've been. You can hear my background. It's been quite varied. And so I move from one thing to another. And I go fairly deeply in whatever I study, but I get bored and I move on to the next topic.
Is it that there's a name for that? People who are interested in multiple different things and keep trying different things and study different things. Is it poly something?
I don't know, but I like to think I'm a Renaissance woman. That's one of the ways that they describe it, is someone who is multifaceted and loves me. And they're all, it's interesting. Many years ago, I did a journaling workshop where it's called the Intensive Journal by Ira Progoff, and
Mhm.
I teach a version of it now. But when I did it, it suddenly made my life make sense. There were threads that connected all the things I did. It wasn't, I was not skydiving one day and pole vaulting another. I mean, I was clearly on the same kind of path, but I didn't recognize it. It looked like I was jumping from one thing to another,
Mhm.
but it's all coming together. And in fact, it was only recently that I began describing myself as the inner compass coach because I
Mm-hmm.
looked at everything I was teaching and they were all different, but they all had the intention of helping people go within and finding their own wisdom. So I was able to put it all together in one, it's a coaching package, if you will. It's
Mm-hmm.
hybrid, that's both training, but it also just made my life suddenly make sense. Like it
Mm-hmm.
all fit. And part of it was because in the 16 years I spent in the convent, I learned how to not listen to myself. The rule said, obey. Someone
Mm-hmm.
else knows best what you should be doing. You listen to what someone else is saying. And I lived that intensely because I thought it was the way to holiness. And eventually when I left, I started recognizing that I had shut down my own inner knowing. And so I don't think I did it consciously, but I began a pursuit of how to listen to myself. And I studied with all kinds of people, read all kinds of books, and eventually started seeing the pattern. Hey, it comes together. And I can teach this now because I really know what it's like to live without it, and I know what it's like to live with it. And I see tremendous difference. And it's really helpful.
So,
So
what was that like, though, going from being in the convent and, being very obedient and, listening to somebody else telling you what you needed to do. And then all of a sudden you realized you can listen to your own self and set your own path. I mean, was that liberating or was it a little scary at first?
It was very scary at first. So a little dark night kind of thing that says, who am I? What is it that I'm
Mm,
supposed to be following? And, I can only look at it in retrospect. I think at the time I was just, it took me a long time to leave, even. It's kind of like you know what you should do and you don't do it for the longest time. I would say 4 or 5 years I stayed, even though I loved the life. It just became incompatible with what I really believed. And I was
hmm
looking at some of the teachings and saying, this isn't who I am, but who am I?
hmm
But eventually it just panned out. I mean, the first few days and the first few months were actually almost funny. I missed the Beatles. I missed all the things because we weren't allowed to watch TV or listen to music or anything. So leaving the convent and going out and starting to date. I mean, I didn't even know what to
Wow.
say. It was very, and I think back, it's like, who was that person? And gradually it unfolded. I, met people. I began, and I'm a voracious reader, so I was able to pick up things pretty quickly. But it
So
was
I'm
a
really
process. It was
curious.
a process, and I teach people it's a process. It's not like you're not listening, and then tomorrow
Right.
all of a sudden you can.
So I'm really curious, how old were you when you left the convent?
I was 33.
Wow.
So I entered at the age of 17 and left at 33. And so it was significant. It was a significant part of my life. And, it was a powerful part, Cheryl. It taught me to listen, even though I didn't realize that. We were in silence most of the time. And so I was listening. And that's where the conflict arose because it was like not always what I was being told. And
hmm
so it was very powerful and very challenging, but as I said, it was a rewarding time on a lot of levels. And eventually I left and became a computer programmer, which is kind of just knowing me for 5 minutes, you can tell that was not where I belonged. But I worked in a cubicle with a bunch of people and
Oh,
it was kind of, but what that's done now, when you look back, I see every one of my key lessons is that everything in life matters and it's a gift. I
hmm
now can do all kinds of things on the computer that
hmm
most people my age are afraid of. I'm not afraid. I worked for AT&T and I demolished some of the biggest platforms and I was able to retrieve it. So I learned that you can't really do that much harm. And I'm not afraid to try things. And so, doing work online right now it comes second nature to me. So I'm grateful. And I like to tell everybody, look at your life not as that was an accident, that was bad, but everything that we've ever done somehow fits when we can take a look at it. And when we start looking at life as a gift, it changes how we experience life. It's
Well,
very
it's
interesting.
everything is a stepping stone. The good, the bad, the ugly, it doesn't really matter. You don't judge it. It's just it's one more step.
And we don't always see it. We don't realize it. We don't know at the moment, why is this happening like this? But when I look back, I can say everything had a place. Everything,
hmm
and the journaling process is, I love teaching this particular process because it shows you that it all fits. Everything, kind of has the same meaning, same background. Uh, and I teach all of my clients how to do this so that they have an appreciation for their own life and
hmm
begin to trust themselves and trust the universe in the process. And life is going to give us good things. I think it
hmm
was Einstein says the biggest question you could ask is the universe a friendly place? And
hmm
when people don't, and what I find is the clients that I work with are usually in doubt, self-doubt. They don't trust themselves. They're not sure who to trust. And they don't believe the universe is very friendly, as when you're coming from that orientation. And when I can help them to start seeing the gift in everything that's ever happened, it transforms their lives. It's really an amazing experience. So I watch people like not lose it completely, but they drop anxiety. They don't live in
Hmm.
that conscious, anxious state. And that's such a, a transformation that can happen.
Well, I think just in our society, I mean, we do have a lot of anxiety and self-doubt, and I think a lot of it comes from external sources where people are telling us what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we should eat, I mean, everything is just so good, bad, do this, do that. And we kind of do get a little bit lost in what we need for ourselves and listening to that voice, that, as you called it, the inner wisdom that we were born with. And I think that as we go through life, even I like to talk about like intuition. When I was a little girl, we'd hear people say, even the men, oh, yeah, my wife's intuition or women's intuition. And that, oh, if my wife says something that her intuition is speaking to her, she says, yeah, they all listen to it, even the men. And then as I was starting to grow up, you didn't hear that much about intuition anymore. And it was almost like it was weaned out of it or out of us to trust that inner voice and the gut reactions that we'd get, like, this person isn't really safe, or this isn't a good situation. And I mean, could you speak to that?
Well, it's interesting because you're reminding me of one of my favorite teachers is a woman named Sonia Choquette. And right now, she's posting things all over that says the time of intuition has finally come, and we're
Mm-hmm.
beginning to hear it again and trust ourselves. And she teaches something that's really amazing that I love to teach people. Like the first step of starting to listen again is that we all have two voices going on in our heads. And, I remember in Catholic school, they taught it was the angel and the devil on your shoulder. I never liked that analogy, but her analogies is that we have a barking dog and a spirit. And she actually suggests that you name each of them. And the barking dog is loud. It's always saying you should do this. This is, as you mentioned before, this is how you should eat. This is what you should be doing. This is what you wear. This is what, and all the directions that it gives us that it's not okay unless you're doing this. And we feel bad when we hear it. And we were
Mm-hmm.
like, but listen to it. It frightens us. And so we listen. The other voice is a very soft, gentle, loving voice. And it's the voice that can tell us things we don't want to hear, but it tells us in a way that makes us feel loved and accepted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the key to learning how to follow your inner guidance is to start listening for those two voices. And that's the easiest way. Start noticing, how am I feeling? What's happening in my body when I think these thoughts? And if the thoughts are punishing or you must do or why aren't you, it's your barking dog. Tell it to go rest, you'll feed it later, and listen to the voice of spirit. And the voice of spirit is, you have to be quiet to listen to the voice of spirit because it's soft, but it's sometimes funny too. It sometimes speaks to us through music that we hear. It
Mm-hmm.
sometimes speaks to us through billboard signs that you see on the highway or someone's license plate. I just heard so many stories of that, but it's amazing. And so one of the first things I want to tell everyone listening is pay attention to your energy and pay attention to those voices. That's the clearest way. And you can even start journaling, like what happens when I listen to that voice?
Mm-hmm.
What happened when I heard that barking dog and paid attention to it? And what happened when I listened to spirit? And you train yourself to listen better. It's kind of a fun exercise and powerful as well.
Well, I love the fact that you're using the analogy of the barking dog because, yeah, I love dogs. I have two right now. My husband and I actually ran a rescue for about 7 years when we were still in
Oh,
Colorado.
wow.
That was a while back. We were a lot younger then. But when the dogs are barking, and like I said, I only have two, but boy, they could make a lot of noise. My anxiety just starts, goes off the roof. And I mean, I can calm myself down pretty quickly, but if I'm trying to do something, even if it's as simple as making dinner, or maybe I'm on my computer and they start barking, I just kind of like I can't take it. I can't think straight until finally they're quiet. And then all of a sudden, I go back to like homeostasis. I can function again. But it's really crazy. That barking dog gets a lot of attention.
Yes, and that's what gets most of our attention in life. And if you think about social media, it's filled with barking dogs. People are
Hmm.
always giving their opinions and, giving you doom or the news. I turned off the news many years ago.
Hmm.
I had a teacher once who said the only time you should listen to the news is to get your prayer list for the day, which is quite interesting.
Hmm.
So I've learned, when something's important, I find out about it. I don't need to be telling myself or listening to all the negativity that's happening in the world. And it doesn't mean that you're blind to it. It doesn't mean you don't care, but you're learning to shut out that barking dog, that loud
Hmm.
noise that's interrupting what that guidance is trying to say. I used to have a practice that I'm going to talk about and maybe hopefully remind myself to do it again. But every time I changed activity, if I was on the phone talking to someone and I finished, rather than just jump into the next thing, I would pause and simply say, "What's next?" And my inner knowing always told me, now you should go do this. Now do this. Even when I'm hungry, I don't eat at certain hours. I eat when my body says now. And it's quite interesting when we learn to really start to listen. And it's a practice that's very helpful. It's like when we're finished here, I don't have a list of what I'm going to do next. I stop and say, "What's next?"
Hmm.
I do have a list today. I have another meeting, but it's sometimes, but even pausing before that so that we're centered before we go to that next encounter. And
It's
I have
almost it's like putting punctuation on a sentence. So you're finished now, and you can move on to the next thing.
it also helps you live in the present moment. And rather
Mm.
than, planning. My personality type likes to plan. I'm always a mile ahead of myself. I'm always thinking about what's next. What should I be doing? And so that practice keeps me totally focused. I also recently learned another practice that I want to share it with you and your audience here because it's changing my life. I've been doing it for almost 2 years now, and it's a 7-minute practice.
Hmm.
And you begin, and when people say, "I don't have time to meditate," you can find 7 minutes and do this. And the first 2 minutes are simply getting in touch with your breath and your sensation. It's like, what's going on in the here and now? What's happening in my body? And when we begin it, it's amazing. You start feeling tingles, you start feeling rumbling, you start feeling pain you didn't know, you start feeling relaxation, all kinds of things that are happening all the time, but we kind of ignore them. We are not embodied creatures. Most of us live in our head. And so
Hmm.
it teaches us to ground, to be centered. 2 minutes. And then take 2 minutes when you really get grounded in your body, something in you says, that feels good. And that's your heart. And your heart is coming online saying, this is what I appreciate. This is what I love. This is what settles me. And so you spend 2 minutes in that gratitude and in the feeling of your heart expanding. And you can think of your heart area and your entire chest from the front to the back and to both sides. And, just be aware of the breath in that part of the body as well. And then when you do both of those things, when you get really centered in your in sensation and then in the gratitude and the feeling of the tenderness of the heart, your mind gets quiet. It's
Hmm.
amazing. And sometimes there's still chatter, but there's space in between the chatter. I don't know how to
Hmm.
describe it any other way, but you can start hearing possibility, vision, ideas, things that you never thought about before, things that are positive, that bring you joy. It's amazing how the mind functions to connect us with more than ourselves. And when the mind is working properly, that's what it does rather than chatter.
Mhm.
And once you do all three things, so 2 minutes in each, then 1 minute to just remember that it's all one. And so the gut, the heart, the head, they're working in unison. You can actually feel the breath going through the entire body and just come together. That's what makes us totally human, when we can take those three areas and really focus and we live in the present moment. And every spiritual teaching teaches us, you know, you probably know very well from your own practice of martial arts. I mean, being centered, being grounded, being in the body is vitally important. You don't want to lose contact with that, or you can lose a lot else. So
Mhm.
that practice is something, it's called the presence practice, and it was created by a man named Russ Hudson, who is one of the key Enneagram teachers and one of my favorite teachers. I constantly study with him.
Mhm.
So,
So could you tell us a little bit more about the Enneagram? I mean, I've heard it before, and I've spoken to a few practitioners along the way, just in my own personal life. But we talk a lot on the show about, neuroplasticity and that type of thing. So I think that that almost kind of goes hand in glove a little bit with the idea of Enneagram, but I don't know. So if you
okay,
want to, and I think a lot of our listeners would really like to learn more about it.
I can do a quickie on the Enneagram.
Okay.
I've been studying the Enneagram for a number of years, and it keeps opening more and more. And I recently did a 14-month training before I became an Enneagram certified and accredited. So what I'm going to say in 5 minutes isn't going to teach everything, but it
Mhm.
gives you a hint. The Enneagram is both a psychological typing tool to tell us more about our ego, our personality, and is also a tool for spiritual growth.
Mhm.
And that's what most people miss. They pick up the Enneagram number and they say, "Oh yeah, I remember. I once heard I was a three." And that does you nothing. So I just want to say to people, the first step is to learn your Enneagram type. And your type develops because we all come into the world in perfection. Look at every baby. Everybody smiles at a baby because the
Mhm.
baby is pure gift and perfection. And then something happens and we are wounded in some way. It doesn't have to be a major trauma, just something goes wrong in our childhood, and we get a message: in order to be safe, this is what I have to do. And it breaks up into 9 different ways of being safe, if you will, taking care of yourself. That's what forms the ego. And psychologists have verified this. The Enneagram goes back to the ancient Greeks, and I mean, nobody really knows the foundations of it. It's taught in every religion. It's not something new just to, name our type.
Mhm.
But the first step is to learn the type. And type one are people who know that the world is perfect and they're always looking for the right way to do things. And usually they're right when they tell you, and sometimes they're a bit righteous about the way they say it, and it feels judgmental. So each of these types has a plus and minus going on. But the ones are the people who have perfect order in the universe, if you will. The twos are the caretakers. They're the people who look at everybody else's needs before they even see their own. In fact, most of them, when they're not healthy, they don't even see their own needs. They're always,
Mhm.
and it almost can feel manipulative. They're trying to take care of you even when you haven't asked for it. But when they're healthy, and by the way, every type has 9 levels of health. So it's not as simple as just knowing the 9 types.
Mhm.
All right, this is where it gets somewhat complicated. But an unhealthy two will be out there fixing everybody else and ignoring themselves. A healthy two will give you unconditional love. All right, so
Okay.
there we go. Threes, we're told somewhere along the line it's how they perform that matters more than who they are. You have
Mm.
to do certain things. So they are the people who can teach us how to be successful in the world because they have learned that. But one of the things that happens with the three is that they don't really know who they are because they become whatever they think is needed in the
Mm.
situation in order to get ahead. So the threes have that gift and that cross. The fours are the most unique people in the world, and they are the deep thinkers. Life is very deep, meaningful, and why doesn't everybody get that? They are often the artists, and they often envy other people. They're looking at how do I belong? How can I be like that person? They're the most introspective of the crowd. All right, you're getting the flavor, how different we
Mhm.
all are. The fives I mentioned a little earlier are the bookworms. When a five wants to learn how to play tennis, they read a book about it instead of going out on the court. So fives go very deep into, they're not always introverts, but many of them are. They're the type of people that kind of guard their knowledge and they become experts usually at one thing and sometimes at one thing that nobody else would even think about.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. The fives, a lot of the characters in Belle in oh, what's the name of that movie? The Disney movies have a lot of these
Oh,
characters.
yeah.
You know, like that Beauty and the Beast. Okay, and she is clearly a bookworm and not interested in what all the other women are interested in. That's a five. The six are the people that I've been talking about and talking to, the people who are looking for the other shoe to drop at all times. They're
Mm.
like, oh my glory, who can I trust? They are great in committee meetings because they see the flaws that nobody else sees, but
Mhm.
they also see flaws that aren't even there because they're looking for what could go wrong constantly. And when they trust, they are the most loyal friends you'll ever want to know. But they struggle with this self-doubt and lack of trust. And those are the people I most like to work with because
Mhm.
I think that the work that I do helps them see they can trust themselves. And once they trust themselves, they can start trusting others as well. They don't when I was in a convent, I was living as a six. I was outsourcing my own authority to an organization I thought I could trust. And
Mhm.
that's what happens frequently.
Mhm.
Sevens are the kind of people who you love to be around. They're joyful, they're fun, they are enthusiastic, they're visionary, and they avoid pain at all costs. So they do not even see what could go wrong because everything has a positive glow to it. Everything is fine no matter what. I whistle a happy tune so no one will suspect that I'm afraid. All right.
Mhm.
Seven. I happen to be a seven. I know that one well.
Mhm.
Then the eights are the people who are into the vital energy of the universe. So when an eight walks in the room, you know it. They're in
Mhm.
command, they're in control. They they really kind of fear vulnerability, but when they get healthy, they help the vulnerable. They're the
Mhm.
ones that are out there. They're often the bosses, the people in charge. You know, they command their voice is even louder than most other people. Oh,
Mhm.
I listened recently to a panel of people. You can almost tell they're typed by the tone of their voice. It's just so interesting. So, and then there are the nines, and the nines are the people who we describe as self-forgetting.
Mhm.
Everybody else comes before them. Not so much like the two. They're not taking care of everybody's needs, but if you say, where do you want to go for dinner? I don't know. Where do you want to go?
Mhm.
It's like they'll comply. They're the easiest people to get along with. They're known for what's called sloth, but it means that they're not excited, not activity, not lazy. It's not laziness. I mean, some of the words that are used in the Enneagram language are ancient words that
Mhm.
don't really say the same thing today. Anyway, those are your nine types. It's a very quick,
Yeah.
rundown. Anybody who wants to write to me, I actually have a free course I can send you that you can learn a little bit more about each type. I use music, I use stories to explain each type. And then once you learn your type, though, it becomes, what can I learn about what happens to me under stress? What happens to me when I'm integrated? What can I do to get healthier? How do I relate to other types? It has helped me tremendously to communicate with people
Hmm.
because I don't ever label someone else's type. When someone says type me, you got to type yourself because type comes from your motivation. It doesn't come from, it's not necessarily your outer actions. Sometimes I can be acting like an eight. I have what they call an eight wing. So there
Hmm.
are times I sound like an eight. And if somebody were meeting me at that time, they might mistype me.
Hmm.
So the motivation is really what carries it. Anyway, you can tell I can talk about this one for a long time. It's one of my favorite topics.
Well, it sounds like knowing your type or just, getting that kind of understanding and self-awareness can actually be your superpower.
Absolutely, because we talk in Enneagram language about the virtues, and the
Hmm.
virtues are not something you work at, which is what I learned early on. But what happens is, as you let go of that, what they call fixation of your type, and you let go of the passion of your type, so the emotions and the thinking around your type, as they lose their grip you become the virtue naturally. So
Hmm.
you get healthier. And hopefully, as you get older, when you're aware, and that's the only thing we say to people, you need to become aware. When people say, how do I learn my type? Start noticing. How am I responding? What am I doing? I don't look like other sevens, for example, because, well, first of all, there's so many facets of the Enneagram that it's hard to just describe nine types.
Hmm.
There are lots of things. You have what they call wings, you have arrows, you have instincts. I mean, we can go on. And so it shows why there are so many differences. But when you start to understand it and you start noticing, like rather than put yourself down, it's like, there I go. Isn't that interesting? And the more you become aware, the less you do it. It's so interesting because when you start doing things that aren't as helpful in your life, there's something in you that knows and it stops you. But you got to start noticing it in the first place. There are so many people that aren't even paying attention. So, step one is to just observe yourself, become aware of what's going on in your body. Become aware of that's what many people say. How do I know it's valid? I'm like, check your body. It'll tell
Hmm.
you. You got a
Hmm.
stomach ache? That's not the right decision. If your
Hmm.
head's hurting, it's not because you ate too much last night.
Hmm.
So there are like real signals within our body.
Hmm. So tell the listeners a little bit more about your practice, how you work with people, who your, ideal client is. I know that you work with people who are maturing, as we all are. So tell us a little bit more about that.
All right, you see my dragonfly, and so I have a
Yes.
dragonfly behind me. The dragonfly doesn't get its true colors until it reaches maturity. So most of the people I work with are either mid-age or a lot older. I mean, some 70s and 80s. It's quite fascinating. I worked recently with a 94-year-old woman. She took every program I ever taught, and she made her transition recently, and I was blessed to actually do a memorial service for her while she was still alive.
Wow.
I mean, we knew it was the end, and so I gathered all her friends online and we did a service. Anyway, I got the chills just thinking of her.
Wow.
But what I do is a group of trainings. I have what I call six pillars, are
Hmm.
different trainings that I've taken or that I've created over the years that teach you how to move from fear to faith, how to listen to your inner voice, how to get the guidance from angels and spirit guides, how to do journaling that's going to teach you about your life. Those are the kinds of trainings, and people are always welcome to just come to one of the trainings. But the key program that I have is the Inner Compass program, where people come for 6 months. They do five of the trainings in 6 months. And we also meet once a week to do coaching. So
Mm-hmm.
how's it going? What are you learning? How are you applying it? What are you doing? And so I do most of it with groups. I occasionally work one-on-one, but mostly group coaching because we learn so much from each other.
Oh,
And
yes.
so it's the Inner Compass system.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sixth one for those who want it is a course called Embracing the Aging Process. And it talks about aging and dying, which is the greatest fear for most people. And that's another 2 months that we go through that as well. So people can come into the program at any time. They don't have to go in order. They can come like next month, I'll be doing one on the visioning process, the difference between visualization and visioning. Most people visualize what they want and then they get it and say, that wasn't what I wanted after all. So, what I teach is how to go to listen to that spirit within you that knows. And it's a process that was created by a man named Michael Beckwith out of Santa Monica, and
Mm-hmm.
very powerful process. We spend 6 weeks learning how to vision so that we
Wow.
can look at what is my life calling me to be
Mm-hmm.
and to do. So people can come in to any one of the trainings. Most of my trainings are what we call evergreen, which means they
Mm-hmm.
can take it on their own time. But then they come to the coaching sessions, and the coaching sessions is where it happens, where we interact and they can learn. And I learn a lot too. And you asked, well, who are my best clients? Anyone who wants to know more about their inner compass. In Enneagram terms, it's mostly Enneagram sixes or nines that I find gravitate towards me,
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting, but very often others as well, because we all need to learn how to go deeper, and I'm really good at it. I've been practicing it for many years
Mm-hmm.
now. And I also help bring that joy and enthusiasm that the sixes and nines are missing sometimes in their
Mm-hmm.
life. So we all have gifts, and they bring me gifts because
Mm-hmm.
I have one of them, one of my clients asked if she could be my assistant, and she sees every flaw in everything I ever do. I mean, picks out all the inconsistencies or what. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful gift. I don't see it. I'm blinded to that.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God for her. So anyway, anybody who wants to, I actually give a free PDF for people who sign my mailing list, and
Mm-hmm.
it teaches them, what's blocking them from, really hearing I often call it the vows we all take. And we all
Mm-hmm.
take some vows. Maybe your
Mm-hmm.
vow was to perfectionism. It wasn't obedience like mine was.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learn a little bit about why can't you trust yourself? What are the things that are blocking you? And you can get that by just going to my website, ToniLamotta.com. It's ToniLamotta.com. And, once you're on the list, you'll hear about all the other trainings that we're doing, and you can join it or, you know, get in touch. That the website will show you how to get in touch with me directly if you want to talk as well. I love meeting people.
Excellent. I'm going to sign up for your newsletter because I
Well,
think
thank
this
you.
is just absolutely fascinating information. And I could talk to you all day long, but I know that you've got another call. So
I
I'm just going to ask you before we sign off and say goodbye is do you have one more final little pearl of wisdom or something you want to leave with the listeners that they can kind of, chew on for next couple of days?
Yeah, one of them is to not take life so seriously. So many people, I think, especially in our day and age, so much going on in our world, people
Mm-hmm.
take it so seriously. And to look for the moments of joy.
Hmm.
And so to really look, by the way, I talk about the guides, and one of the guides is the joy guide. And so every morning I ask my joy guides to remind me to laugh, remind me to look for what's positive. And so I just invite everybody, you all have a joy guide. I name mine, but you can just talk to like whoever is out there, please find me some things that I can laugh with. And, it changes our life when we see life from that perspective.
Excellent. Toni, thank you so much for being here. I have loved this conversation. It has been an honor to meet you, and I can't wait to do another deep dive into your website.
Thanks, Cheryl. Nice to meet you too.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. What a fantastic conversation. Please share this episode with everyone you know. There is so much valuable information and positive energy. You could just hear it in Toni's voice. I just love her passion. And do remember, don't take life or yourself so seriously. Just have a laugh, relax, pay attention to your breath, your breathing. Go to Toni's website and, yeah, take those steps to make your life a little bit more enjoyable and more joy in it as well. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.